So, on February 14th and 15th, Janet Yellen, chairman of the Federal Reserve Board, in charge of the United States financial and monetary policy pretty much, one of the most influential people in the world, goes and testifies in front of Congress. She doesn't do it this very often. So when she is, you think people would ask her some very timely, sensitive, poignant questions. But no. Let's look at some of the brain busters she had to deal with when she was there.
Certainly, as you know, I have a strong interest in making sure that we have equality and equity as it relates to employing women and minorities. So I want to start with first thanking you for responding in writing, and not only in writing, but detail to that question. I know in the Senate hearings, that Senator Brown also posed some questions as we look at the Federal Reserve Bank and what's happening. I know we have a couple openings since our last conversation here. But let me just say, if there's any additional things for the first part, I have two questions that hopefully you can share where we are, if we're making any headway, because I also pulled some facts, and according to the Fed UP campaign at the Center for Popular Democracy, it states that the board of directors were 83% white and 70% male. Under the Federal Reserve Act, the Board of Governors has the authority to appoint Class C directors.
You have one of the most powerful people in the world. You have one of the most influential people in the United States who's in charge of policy, who's in charge of the big banks, who's in charge of so much of the economy, and you're worried about diversity. You truly do not seem to know what is a problem. Because if diversity is the main problem the Fed has right now, we have no other problems. There can't be anything if you're worried about diversity. And it's really a dumb question in the first place. I kind of relate this to a sports team. Say the front office. You're looking at the front office and you want a choice. You give a fan a choice, a true fan a choice of the team or his front office. He can either have a very diverse front office, B, a very monochromatic front office, or C, a very good front office and the people just happen to be the people. Any true person is going to pick C. If you know there's discrimination going on, then you should investigate, not ask them, are you being diversity? This is a waste of a question. This is a waste of time. How the hell did you get here? You're wasting time. This is a prime opportunity to talk about problems, get her input on things, and you ask her about diversity? Oh, God. And that's to start it off. Now let's talk about this next brainbuster. I'll speed it up so that people can get and understand it. Now, if you're confused, it's because he's just on a diatribe. He's just monologuing the whole way. Those few seconds that Janet Yellen spends responding, she basically says, I'm not really sure. And who could? The guy's on just a rant. He uses up all his time where he can ask any question, and all he does is blast Trump and his economic policies. Okay, he could have just uploaded that to YouTube. This is like one of the 2 times a year you get to talk to Janet Yellen, and you use it all just to go on a rant. What's the point? Now, he was a Democratic House member, so I don't want you to think this is the same. This Republican House member pretty much did the same thing. They should just cede their time and not waste the rest of our time while watching it. It's just completely and totally pointless. The next is this. This is the chairman.
Madam Chair, as I know you're aware, on February 3rd, President Trump issued an executive order of core principles to regulate the United States financial system. Section 1, paragraph C, says foster economic growth and vibrant financial markets through more rigorous regulatory impact analysis. You were quoted yesterday in your Senate testimony saying that you agree with these core principles. Were you quoted accurately?
Did you get that question? The question was, do you agree with this broad sweeping platitude that Trump said, oh, make regulations that do no harm? Basically what he said. Everyone can agree with that. It's an easy one to say. All you're looking for is some kind of photo op or news quote that you can take back somewhere. It's a waste of time. It's a wasted question. It's not even hard to answer. Let's move on.
On the opposite side of the aisle, that Dodd-Frank has had a significant adverse impact on our economy.
Oh, Waters. Just listen to these questions.
Some brief responses to some of the following questions. Since passage of the Wall Street Reform Law, has business lending by commercial banks expanded or contracted? Roughly, how many private sector jobs have been added to our economy? Have wages increased or decreased in the past year? Has the trend in aggregate household net worth been positive or negative? The trend in federal budget deficits risen or fallen over the past few years?
All those questions were just nonsense. They were kind of 50,000-foot questions. Has the deficit gone down? Yes, but it's still $500 billion. That's still too high. All their other questions. Well, has there been jobs? Has in the recovery there been a recovery? Duh. Yes, you're wasting time. All you're doing is trying to say, Obama was great. Well, it wouldn't be that hard for anyone to be great if I got $4.5 trillion of QE, plus I got a TARP bailout. Oh my God. And plus 0% interest rate for 8 years. Man, that was tough to recover from. And he didn't even really recover. There's problems. One of the reasons why Trump is president. Oh, let's move on to the next moron.
I want to ask you, I know there have been a lot of concerns about making these banks, getting rid of all these regulations so they can get rid of all that capital money that they're just sitting there doing nothing, which of course is not right, but that's okay, I'll take that. As I understand the capital requirements, and correct me when I'm wrong, if I go to a bank and deposit $100 in my checking account that I will come, I know there'll be some dollar fees here and there that I have to pay, but effectively, pursuant to the general regulation, the bank is then required to pretty much hold 6 of those dollars in a capital account, roughly 6% of what I've deposited. That doesn't mean it's just sitting there, but that's what they have to do. So if the bank goes belly up and there's a run, or if I just want my money back, the bank says if they have a problem, they've made bad choices, the economy's gone south, something terrible. Maybe there's a president who cut taxes too much or got involved in too many wars that he didn't want to pay for. But if anything happened and I went to that bank and there was a run, I can only get 6 of my dollars back based on those capital requirements. Do you think that's sufficient, that 6% of their assets are held in capital?
Honestly, did people actually catch that? What he actually did is he explained reserve banking to the chairman of the Fed. If the chairman didn't know what he was talking about by just saying cash reserves, she should have been fired. She knew it. You spent all this time basically explaining to the camera what you meant. This is stupid, because only people who would be watching this would be people who already intrinsically understood what you were talking about. It's a waste of time. Plus, these reserves, you should have just said, do you think the 6% reserve level is appropriate? And did you throw out, say, like, I would think something like 10%, 20% would be more appropriate? No, you didn't. You just said 6%, threw it out there, nothing. And all she did was just jump around of all the different hoops they throw it through.
Let's, President Trump's proposals would have far-reaching negative consequences for the economy. These harmful policies rolling back the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, cutting taxes for the wealthy, curtailing immigration and deporting undocumented immigrants, adopting a protectionist trade policy, eliminating the Affordable Care Act, and cutting back the social safety net for vulnerable populations. And the president has also reversed a planned Federal Housing Administration mortgage insurance premium cut that would have saved homeowners $500 a year. After the recession of 2008, bringing in some kind of regulation over and responsibility over our financial institutions, including creation of the CFPB. Have we not learned anything since 2008? And now we have this effort to roll back these regulations. What do you think the impact will be on our economy if we do this in a willy-nilly way?
This one was quite interesting. He starts off by basically bashing everything Trump has to say in his economic policies, and there's some legitimate points there, but he covers too many, half of which don't really even apply to Janet Yellen. So he's just talking to the camera. Then when he finally gets around to asking a question, what does he ask about? A department she's not even in charge of. Now, granted, the Consumer Protection Bureau does get funded by the Fed, but still, Janet Yellen has nothing to do with that department. How would she know? Let's ask the State Department how the Fed is doing. I mean, this is ridiculous. There's their own director in charge of that department. Ask him. What the fuck? God, please, you need to get to a point and stop talking about stuff. Be poignant. Ask her questions all related to her. You only get her twice a year, and you get 5 minutes at that. Oh, you waste so much time. How'd you get elected?
And I call upon you to ask President Trump if he would be kind enough just to give me and my co-sponsors an opportunity to come over to the White House and talk to him about these bills.
Honestly, did I just hear that? Honestly, did I just hear that? This congressman asked the Fed Reserve, not about anything she's doing, if she could help him get an appointment with the president. Really? I mean, really? Is Donald Trump that hard to get a hold of? I'm like flabbergasted. What? How does Congress work? It obviously doesn't.
Two Saturdays ago, in Kansas City, Missouri, where I reside, I held a town hall meeting. The media said 1,000. It was probably about 1,100 showed up on the proposed or the executive order on immigration, and people.
Okay, I speed it up a little bit right here because he asked about immigration. He asked about immigration.
Showed up with great fear. And this past Saturday, I was in Baltimore, Saturday evening, and all of a sudden my cell phone started ringing, just one call after another. And there was widespread panic in Kansas City, in the clergy community. Across the board, Catholics, Protestants were all concerned. There's a pastor's phone chain of people calling each other that ICE would be at churches on this past Sunday arresting immigrants, undocumented immigrants. It was such a big deal that if your staff or if any of my colleagues' staff would like to check, it's a front page story in the Kansas City Star on the rumor. All three before networks did stories. And so they were calling asking me, do you know how many ICE agents are coming in and so forth. It was just an awful kind of thing. I felt terrible because I was in Baltimore and I was unable to be there. And how this connects with you is I'm just wondering if there is some success at deporting 11 million immigrants, do you think that will have any kind of impact on the U.S. economy?
Really? Immigration. Immigration. Janet Yellen doesn't know much about immigration. You're asking how it impacts the economy if this pie-in-the-sky notion actually occurred. There's nothing on board. She can't answer it because there's no plans. You're fishing for a comment, it seems, and you're not serious about actually being on this committee. And honestly, the most honest statement of the day came from this.
You talked briefly about regulation. I'll just make this point, not a question.
Better words were not spoken. He's just making a statement, and that's what the vast majority of them did. Now, there were some good questions throughout these 2 hours that she testified. Most of the time, she dodged the questions. Luckily, she doesn't have to worry, because all she has to do is dodge it. Nobody ever follows up. This whole committee is nonsense, since most of them don't even understand what Yellen does. They're worthless questions. You're wasting time. You just seem to be talking because you love your own voices. God, this system is broken, and these people shouldn't be. You know how many economists would love to be in your position to where they would get Janet Yellen to actually have to answer their questions? You could consult with them. There are dozens, thousands of them probably out there who would love to ask Janet Yellen a question that she would have to answer. And none of them would have to do with diversity or immigration. Oh, these people, all of them. God. If you ever want to know what's wrong with Congress, you got them right here. None of them know what the committee they're in charge of. Ooh. Well, I hope everyone else is as frustrated as I am. Thank you for watching.